Hello everyone, and welcome to the 42nd ripoff episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Steve Haines from GTA 5. An egotistical, cocky, and constantly sarcastic agent in the FIB in Los Santos, whose own self-destructive tendencies and bordering on suicidal negligence led to his demise. In today's video, I wanted to go over the story of GTA 5's second most prominent antagonist, and see where exactly he went wrong, and why he ended up biting the bullet of a sniper rifle fired by Trevor Phillips. First, let's discuss what we know of Steve Haines' background. He is stated to have been born in 1975, which would make him 38 years old in GTA 5, which takes place in 2013. Like most antagonists, it seems, we have little to go off of that doesn't directly correlate with the main story. He joined the FIB around 1993, and throughout the following years, he achieved enough to be promoted to the boss of several FIB agents, which of course includes Andreas Sanchez and Dave Norton. As well as that, he managed to be the host of his own television show, named The Underbelly of Paradise, which was a success and made Haines a celebrity. Now, it's unclear why Steve Haines has such a big ego and why he plays dirty in the pursuit of advancing his career. It can be said that based on how the FIB and IAA are portrayed in-universe, both jobs rely on being dishonest, secretive, and overall despicable to get results. In fact, in general, Steve Haines' main role in this story is to task the three protagonists to do tasks to counteract the IAA. And as we see, the IAA went as far to develop a bioweapon to give to a T-word organization to ramp up their funding through a successful T-word attack. So Steve Haines seems to be fully aware and complicit in the shady dealings of his government. Now, Steve Haines claims to be a patriot who'd do anything for his country, but in reality he's a self-righteous egotist. And that ego takes him many places. You can see in all of his appearances that he isn't very careful about avoiding getting caught in his quest to outdo the IAA. We learn that both the FIB and IAA are in hot water due to reduce acts of T-wordism against the United States. And so it's basically a situation in which it's either the FIB who gets funding or the IAA. This is what sparks the competitive rivalry between the two branches. And as we see, the IAA resorts to pretty immoral means in the pursuit of getting in favor with the higher government. But Steve Haines shows that he really isn't any better. The first task he gets the protagonist to perform is stealing Ferdinand Karamov, aka Mr. K, an innocent man under interrogation by the IAA in order to weed out a suspected T-word. After Mr. K is under FIB custody, Steve Haines pretty much continues what the IAA was doing, physical torture, in order to get Ferdinand to talk, except Ferdinand was willing to talk from the very beginning. Steve Haines is to blame for GTA 5's most infamous mission, by the book, as he orders Trevor to torture Mr. K for information, a completely unnecessary act, as Mr. K was willing to talk from the start after all the shit he went through, and Steve Haines just opts to ask him unspecific questions, and having Mr. K tortured when he fails to answer questions in time. Now, it might be obvious that Steve Haines was torturing an innocent man that he knew was innocent out of nothing more than sadism, and Haines was so unprofessional that he let his friend Devin Weston play a part in the torture for both of their sadistic enjoyment. This is reflective off of the man's self-destructive tendencies, as mentioned before. Now, there was nothing wrong with keeping Mr. K in custody, given the end goal was to root out a T-word, but it's clear that the conduct was beyond selfish and reckless. For one, Steve Haines wastes everyone's time by asking Mr. K unspecific, vague questions, and then having him tortured when he felt like it. Despite the man's willingness to talk, the quickest possible way of eliminating the T-word in question would have just been to barrage the man with questions for confirmation. The torture was completely unnecessary, but Steve Haines did it just for his sick kicks and to have his fun. He cared for eliminating a threat as far as it could advance his career. His second mistake was trusting Trevor Phillips of all people with getting rid of Mr. K. While he expected Trevor to simply kill the man, Trevor instead let him off at the Los Santos International Airport. And I imagine given he had already tortured the man, an outcome where he's left off would be a potential liability to the FIB. Because now the man has a story to share that he was tortured by them. Now I imagine the GTA universe has a higher rate of injustice than our own, but there's still standards of characters being arrested and charged, and being held accountable. And some stuff can be simply written off as simply game logic. But the point is, Steve Haines, by getting Trevor to deal with Mr. K, that was a huge mistake on his part. It's not even like Steve Haines was particularly busy. He was just too lazy and incompetent to deal with the man himself. This reckless behavior only continues. You might remember in the Mission Monkey business that he came unprepared, expecting 6 men, and then after finding out it wasn't communicated to the main trio, he gets involved and in the end shoots himself in the leg in order to pass as a double agent. Obviously, all this ends up doing is making him a bigger suspect, and his solution is just to get Franklin and Michael to erase the dirt the FIB have on him in their building. But obviously he doesn't cover his tracks very well, since it seems only information on Haines was erased, leading to a bigger trail. This all results in him trying to get Michael and Dave arrested, trying to pin the crime on him. Inevitably, this causes a 4-way shootout, with the IAA, a rival FIB team, and a shitload of other people including Trevor getting involved, and few escaping with their lives. Agent Sanchez is killed in the shootout by Haines, as he had ratted him out. Honestly, the whole situation was a mess, and I personally didn't even understand what was happening exactly the first couple of times I played this game. It's not bad writing, of course, it's just an overly complicated and messy situation. And with 3 protagonists on top of that, I'm not surprised. But it shows that Steve Haines had a million things to deal with. Now following this event, Steve Haines wants all 3 protagonists dead. But Dave Norton calms him down a tad bit, and he drops the idea of wasting Franklin and Michael. But given Trevor's unpredictability and unstable nature, he still insists that Trevor be put down. Haines and Norton end up ordering Franklin to get rid of Trevor, which he refuses to do. So far, Steve Haines isn't a good strategist. While Franklin is probably capable of killing Trevor in the power scaling standards of GTA, and he is in Ending A, Franklin canonically refused to kill Trevor, and instead he united with Trevor and Michael to take out Haines alongside their other enemies. So in general, by the time of his death, Steve Haines had nearly destroyed his career, and there was a lot of heat on them. And as we learn through Devin Weston, he could end Steve Haines' career if he wanted to. It's clear to see that Steve Haines' self-destructive tendencies were building up for years, and 2013 was when things really started to go wrong for Steve, involving a street hustler, a retired bank robber, and a sociopathic maniac didn't help either. And screwing them over, that was a recipe for disaster. Dmitry Raskolov's weakness was that he didn't know when to call it quits in provoking people after he had betrayed them. And here, it's pretty similar. Except Steve Haines was far worse in handling situations, and he set himself up in a position to be killed or caught eventually. And the former is exactly what happened. He was naive to think Devin Weston wouldn't screw him over, and in the phone call between Steve and Franklin in Ending A, Steve relied on being a friend for Devin, to deter him from going after Michael as the one favor he did for Franklin in return. Yeah, and compared to Ending B, Devin Weston had already handled things with Steve Haines and Dave Norton by the time he and Franklin spoke. There's a clear contrast. It's lucky that he was able to deter Devin Weston in Ending A, but regardless, it shows the differences in power and ability between the two. And Devin Weston made a lot of lethal mistakes too, as I previously spoke about in a previous episode. So with all that being said, what does that leave us with? Steve Haines had a weakness for his inability to diffuse situations, and his arrogant and poorly planned out attempts to counteract the IAA cost him his life. And this left pretty much his mother to grieve for him. Yeah, it's mentioned on Weasel News after Steve Haines is assassinated that he lived with his mother, whom Steve never spoke about, and we only learn about her after he's already dead. Just thought I'd throw that in. So when it comes to Steve Haines as a character, there's a clear pattern to draw to see where he went wrong. I now wanted to talk about his characterization and why I personally think he pales in comparison to Devin Weston. Because while the two characters overlap, it's clear that Devin Weston, with all the power at his disposal, manages to be the more imposing antagonist. On top of that, Steve Haines' sarcasm and douchiness is actually pretty entertaining thanks to Robert Bogue's performance, while Devin Weston, despite his actor's performance, comes off as much more condescending. I think Steve Haines had the charm in his bad jokes, and his self-destructive personality was more tolerable to watch, as he was encountering problems long before Devin Weston did. In fact, before they both died, Steve Haines had more to lose than Devin Weston. And when you consider that Devin only cared about Molly as an asset, and his grudge against Michael was extremely petty, Steve Haines doesn't come across as all that hateable to me personally. The character, despite being an obvious hate sink to first-time players, actually kinda grows on you as you play the game multiple times, and watching his appearances out of context on YouTube in the research for this video, I just can't help but find Steve Haines an entertaining character. Obviously his death in the third way is the most fitting, but I kind of yearn for more antagonists like him in media in general. He might not push your buttons or come off as a proper threat, but he more than makes up for it with his actor's hamminess. So yeah, Steve Haines is evil, but he's also fun to watch. With that, we've concluded yet another episode of Analyzing Evil. What do you think of Steve Haines? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm JJ Plagiarisms. And until next time, what are stories but mystery boxes?